The sound of breaking glass stopped everyone mid-sentence. 5 United States Marines stood frozen, watching John Wayne wipe blood from his knuckles. The bartender's hand hovered over the phone, ready to call the police. But what happened next made him slowly lower the receiver. Because John Wayne wasn't backing away, he was stepping forward. But before that glass shattered, before those Marines learned something that would haunt them for decades, we need to understand how the biggest movie star in America ended up facing 5 trained killers in a bar. 3 hours earlier, Wayne's Cadillac pulled up outside Murphy's bar in San Diego. The valet rushed forward, then stopped. John Wayne didn't want valet service. He parked his own car. He always had, said it kept him grounded. The truth was different. Marion Morrison from Iowa had learned long ago to always know where his exits were. Inside Murphy's, the air was thick with smoke and testosterone. This wasn't a Hollywood hangout. This was a military bar 2 miles from Camp Pendleton. The kind of place where movie stars didn't venture, where real warriors drank away real memories. Wayne chose this place specifically. He was tired of the Hollywood crowd, the fake smiles, the ass-kissing. He wanted to drink with men who'd seen real combat, men who wouldn't treat him like a god. He should have been more careful what he wished for. The bartender, Frank Coletti, recognized him immediately. Frank had served in the Pacific, had seen things that made Hollywood war movies look like cartoons. He nodded at Wayne, poured him a whiskey without asking. The good stuff, the stuff Frank saved for men who'd earned it. Wayne sat alone at the bar, shoulders hunched, trying to shrink his 6'4" frame. He just finished filming The Horse Soldiers, another war movie, another performance as a heroic soldier. The irony wasn't lost on him. Marion Morrison had never served. When World War II came calling, he'd stayed in Hollywood, making movies while real men died on real beaches. The guilt ate at him, had for 20 years. That's when they walked in. 5 Marines, fresh from advanced combat training. Their high and tight haircuts still fresh, their uniforms crisp. They moved like a pack, full of the confidence that comes from surviving the Corps' worst and coming out stronger. Lance Corporal Jake Martinez saw Wayne first, 22 years old, built like a linebacker, with hands that had already killed in Korea. He nudged Private First Class Tommy Chen. "Look what we got here, boys. John fucking Wayne." The words dripped with contempt. Staff Sergeant Roy Williams, the oldest at 28, should have shut it down. But Williams had lost friends in Korea while Wayne made millions playing soldier. The resentment ran deep. "Leave it alone, Martinez," Williams said, but his heart wasn't in it. Martinez ordered a beer loudly, made sure everyone knew the Marines had arrived. His buddies spread out, taking over the pool table, the jukebox, the atmosphere. This was their territory, their sanctuary, and John Wayne was trespassing. Wayne kept drinking, quiet, controlled. Frank watched him carefully. In 20 years of bartending, he'd learned to read men. The loud ones were rarely dangerous. It was the quiet ones you watched, and John Wayne had gone very quiet. An hour passed, the Marines got louder, their jokes got meaner. Martinez kept glancing at Wayne, working up his courage, or maybe his stupidity. Frank couldn't tell which. "Hey, Chen," Martinez said, loud enough for the whole bar to hear. "You see any cowboys in here?" Chen played along. "Nah, man. Just actors pretending to be cowboys." "What about soldiers?" Martinez continued. "You see any real soldiers?" "Just actors pretending to be soldiers." Wayne's hand tightened on his glass. A small movement. Frank saw it. So did Corporal David Brooks, the smartest of the 5 Marines. Brooks had a bad feeling. He'd seen that kind of stillness before, in combat, right before violence exploded. "Martinez," Brooks warned, "leave it." But Martinez was drunk on youth and strength, and the certainty that comes from being 22 and indestructible. He walked over to Wayne, slow, deliberate, making a show of it. "Mr. Wayne," he said, fake polite. "Big fan. Love your movies, especially the ones where you pretend to be tough." Wayne didn't turn, didn't acknowledge, just raised his glass, took a sip, set it down. Martinez put his hand on Wayne's shoulder. Heavy, possessive. "I asked you a question, old man." That's when Frank saw Wayne's eyes in the mirror behind the bar. They'd changed. The Wayne charm was gone. Something else looked back. Something that had nothing to do with Hollywood. "Son," Wayne said, his voice different now, deeper, rougher. "You're about to make the worst mistake of your life." Martinez laughed. His friends moved closer. 5 against 1. Military trained against a Hollywood actor. The math was simple, except they'd done the math wrong. Wayne had been Marion Morrison long before he'd been John Wayne. A kid from Winterset, Iowa. His father was a pharmacist who couldn't hold a job. His family moved constantly, always broke, always struggling. Young Marion learned to fight in a dozen different schools, against a dozen different bullies. He'd been in his first real fight at 7. By 15, he was known in Glendale as a kid you didn't mess with. Not because he started fights, because he finished them. Football at USC had taught him to channel the violence. Hollywood had taught him to hide it for 30 years. He'd played the hero while Marion Morrison stayed buried. But Marion never left. He just waited. And Lance Corporal Martinez had just woken him up. What happened next would be dissected in Marine bars for decades. Witnesses would argue about the details, but they all agreed on one thing. It was the most violent 12 seconds they'd ever seen outside of combat. Wayne didn't stand up so much as explode upward. His whiskey glass shattered in his left hand. That's the breaking glass that had started everything. But his right hand was already moving. It caught Martinez under the jaw with an uppercut that would have made Rocky Marciano proud. Martinez's feet left the ground. His head snapped back. He was unconscious before he hit the floor. But Wayne was already turning, already moving. Chen came at him from the left, throwing a textbook core punch. Wayne slipped it like a boxer, not an actor. His counter wasn't from any movie choreography. It was pure street fighting. An elbow to Chen's throat that dropped him gasping. Williams and Brooks rushed together, trained, coordinated, the kind of attack that worked in combat. But this wasn't combat. This was a bar fight. And John Wayne had been in more bar fights than he'd been in movies. He grabbed a beer bottle from the bar, didn't break it for show like in the films. Used it whole, like a club. One swing caught Williams in the temple. The staff sergeant went down hard. Brooks tried to tackle Wayne at the waist. Wayne brought his knee up, caught Brooks in the solar plexus. The Marine folded, all his training useless against simple brutal violence. That left Private Danny Foster, 19 years old, smallest of the group. He joined the Marines to prove he was tough. Now he stood alone, watching John Wayne standing over 4 destroyed Marines. Wayne's white shirt was splattered with blood, his own from the glass, theirs from the fight. His chest wasn't heaving. His breathing was controlled, steady, like this was nothing, like destroying 4 combat-trained Marines was easier than filming a love scene. Your choice, son, Wayne said. Foster looked at his friends. Martinez was still unconscious, blood pooling under his head. Chen was turning blue, trying to remember how to breathe. Williams wasn't moving at all. Brooks was vomiting, crawling toward the door. Foster raised his hands, stepped back. The fight was over, but the story was just beginning. Frank called for ambulances, not police. This was a military bar. They handled things differently. Wayne sat back at the bar, ordered another whiskey with his good hand. Blood dripped steadily onto the bar from his cut palm. You need medical attention, Frank said. Pour the drink, Wayne replied. As the Marines were loaded onto stretchers, the bar slowly came back to life. But nobody approached Wayne. Nobody spoke to him. They'd seen behind the curtain, seen something that wasn't supposed to exist. Word spread fast. By morning, every Marine at Pendleton knew the story. By the end of the week, it had reached Marine bars across the Pacific. The details changed with each telling, but the core remained. John Wayne had destroyed 5 Marines in 12 seconds. The studio found out 3 days later. Wayne showed up to film with bandaged hands, claiming a ranch accident. The executives believed him, or pretended to. The truth was bad for business. John Wayne was America's hero. Heroes didn't brutalize American servicemen in bar fights, but in military circles, the story became legend. Marines who'd mocked Wayne's movies gained new respect, not for the actor, for the man underneath, the one Hollywood had tried to bury under cowboy hats and scripted heroics. Wayne himself never spoke publicly about the fight. When reporters asked about his bandaged hands, he stuck to the ranch accident story. When fellow actors praised his realistic fight scenes, he'd smile and credit the stunt coordinators. But something had changed. Directors noticed it first. Wayne's fight scenes became more brutal, less choreographed. He'd add moves that weren't in the script. Elbows, headbutts. The kind of violence that looked too real for Hollywood. It's like he's remembering something, one director said. Like he's not playing a fighter. He's just fighting. The truth was simpler and darker. The bar fight had awakened something Wayne had spent 30 years suppressing. Marion Morrison, the Iowa brawler, the kid who'd learned that violence solved problems when nothing else would. For 3 decades, Hollywood had packaged that violence into heroic fantasies. Good guys who fought clean. Heroes who won with honor. But that night at Murphy's, the package had torn open. And what spilled out wasn't heroic or clean or honorable. It was just violence. Pure and simple and terrifyingly effective. The Marines from that night, they never fully recovered. Not physically, those wounds healed. But psychologically, Martinez would wake up in cold sweats, feeling that uppercut again. Chen spoke in whispers for the rest of his life. Williams quit the Corps within 6 months. Brooks transferred to a desk job, his confidence in his training shattered. Foster, the one who'd surrendered, was perhaps the luckiest. He'd seen the truth without having to feel it. They'd all learned the same lesson. Hollywood's biggest lie wasn't what it put on screen, it was what it kept off. Frank Coletti, the bartender, kept serving drinks at Murphy's for another decade. He never forgot that night. The speed, the brutality, The joy in Wayne's eyes when the violence started. "I've seen a lot of fights," Frank would tell trusted customers. "Bar fights, street fights, war. But I've never seen anything like that. It wasn't just that he won, it was how he won. Like he'd been waiting his whole life for someone to give him an excuse." The bloodstains never fully came out of the bar floor. Frank could have replaced the boards, but he didn't. They were a reminder, a warning, that sometimes the most dangerous men were the ones who'd learned to hide it best. Hollywood tried to contain the story. Studio executives held emergency meetings. How do you handle it when your all-American hero turns out to be something else entirely? They doubled down on the image. More heroic roles, more public appearances, more of John Wayne, less of Marion Morrison. But those who knew. Stuntmen started being more careful around Wayne. Directors stopped pushing him in fight scenes, because now they understood. When Wayne threw a punch on camera, he was holding back, always holding back. And nobody wanted to see what happened when he didn't. By 1970, the story had become Marine Corps folklore. Recruits would hear it during training. Usually drill instructors make a point about assumptions, about the danger of underestimating an enemy based on appearance. "You think because someone's old they can't fight," the DI would scream. John Wayne was 52 when he put 5 Marines in the hospital. 52. Your enemy doesn't have to be young to kill you. He just has to know how. The sound of breaking glass, the explosion of movement, 12 seconds of pure, unleashed violence. That was the real John Wayne, the one Hollywood couldn't show, the one America couldn't handle. Marion Morrison, the man who'd won 1,000 filmed fights, who'd only needed 12 seconds to show why. Because the scariest truth wasn't that John Wayne could fight, it was that he'd been holding back his entire career. And in a bar in San Diego, 5 Marines had learned what happened when he stopped.